Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to the show. Today is episode 446. We'll be talking about Putin's reign, like not REIGN, but RAIN. His reign on Ukraine yesterday, and then we're also going to be talking about the Trump team assembling, and the transition in general, and maybe even some other domestic topics. As always, the domestic portion of today's show will be done over on Bongino's, so keep that in mind. Moderators, if you can, just have that link handy. Guys, we got a pretty good show for today. I hate to say it. This is like one of those times when you remember the old Chinese curse, right? May you live in interesting times. The missile you see there in the thumbnail is a Yars intercontinental ballistic missile. Now, the missile that was fired into Ukraine, multiple missiles, evidently is a shorter range variant that is derived from the Yars missile, and so.
Yeah.
So that's
Scott, don't pass yourself up. You also included how much of a red flag it was.
Well, red flag. Yes, absolutely. So we'll be talking about that in depth. And we were talking about this the other day on Wednesday at length. We mentioned how essentially the West is talking themselves step by step into World War III, right? We talked about the idea that, did Putin mean it? Well, I guess this is his way of saying I'm not fucking around. Basically, dropping kinetic impactors, via intercontinental ballistic missile. Well, not ICBM, IRBM. But, I think we're splitting hairs there, Joe. It's like,
particularly
remember the tweet that said, oh, confirm that it's not an ICBM, it's an IRBM, so we don't have to worry now.
When I first mentioned that yesterday, I was trying to stow the panic, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people when they hear ICBM, they automatically think nuclear, but that's not necessarily always the case.
Yeah, that's true. Although it is a very common tactic in stuff like this to do the non-nuclear version of a thing over and over and over again until there's basically nobody even responds to it, because then when you do want to launch the nuclear,
that is called conditioning, right? We actually did, if I remember correctly, we did that in they flew B-29s over Japan several times, in reconnaissance flights or whatever, before doing that. So, they weren't seen as out of the ordinary when they saw them. But yeah, the interesting thing, I saw somebody draw a range circle though for this missile, from where, it was fired from, and it would still cover all of Europe. So, it may not be the missile they used to hit Alaska or Montana or something along those lines, but it definitely is a missile with some long legs and more impressively, an impressive payload. But we'll get into that and what we think that all means later in the show. And then, the big shock. Well, I don't know if it's a big shock, right? But the big news out of Washington is the Matt Gaetz pulling out of for consideration. I hate to say I'm surprised, but I'm not super surprised.
Well, I think it becomes an admission of guilt too, so there's kind of a problem there, longer term. But anyway.
I think that may be perceived that way by a lot of people. I know my wife said that. Oh, well, this means he did it, right? I was like, no, he didn't do it, right? The investigation was done. They didn't indict him.
They didn't. But perception is reality.
So. Exactly right. You're right. And I agree with that. So, but then it goes to, well, who did Trump pick to replace him? And of course, we've got that name, and that's Bondi, right? Bondi Beach, right? Yeah. And I remember the first time I saw her was back in the 2020 election when she was doing something with the was she the Attorney General back in 2000?
She was the Attorney General of Florida. Yes.
Yeah, back in 2000, right? I think the first time I ever became aware of her, because she was doing a lot with the the ballot, the hanging chads and all that kind of stuff during Bush v. Gore. So
2011 to 2019.
2011 to 2019. Well, she was doing something back then, so she clearly wasn't the Attorney General at that point. But so anyway, it's an interesting choice. I don't know that much about her. I know she has a lot of supporters, and she also has detractors, and so I'm willing to give her a Catherine Harris. Maybe you're right. Yeah. If she was a blonde, like with long blonde hair, then what's the difference, right? They're all the same. Blonde lawyers. All right. I didn't say that out loud, did I? Okay. Hunch the Dirty Roofer.
Hey,
like I said, I don't have strong feelings about her because I just don't know much about her. So,
I'm gonna not respond because Rick has already explained to me why I'm wrong about everything over that. So I'm just gonna let that.
God love Rick. God love Rick, but the chat doesn't get to silence my panel, Joe. I want to hear what you have to say. So we'll get to that later in the show. But before we do that, just go around the horn real quick. Joe, how's the weather there?
You know what? It's been a little cool in the morning. We got a little bit of snow, but not much. It's going good. Our hunters who are camped here have gotten their first deer, and it was a really good sized buck. So that's pretty cool. We've processed a couple more elk for the food pantry, which reminds me, there's a video we're going to play in a couple minutes. But before we get there, boys in Dubuque got the shirt on, just so you know. Where is it? This way. Tri-State Industries. If you need something metal fabricated, get with Tri-State Industries in Dubuque, Iowa. Last night they informed me that if I'm ever in Dubuque, stop by. If I'm ever in Dubuque, I'm going to need to because things have gone terribly wrong. No, I'm just kidding. I will stop by at some point. But Bob, the guy who hosted our class, I would be neglectful if I didn't point out that when I got there and in my room, there was some crayon candy waiting for me. And actually on the package here, it says 10 working crayons, gifts, edible crayons for Marines. So good stuff. But what's cool about them, you take them out, and it is actually a working crayon. It's got a little tip here, and on the inside is full of candy. Bonus points for Bob. He did good there. And but I have something for you, Scott. It didn't have the subdued Bucky's patch that I had, but you do have its actual Bucky's patch.
There we go. I'm done.
But you and I also now have matching Bucky's camouflage patches. That's Bucky always in season, so I did pick those up, so that's pretty cool. I wanted to share this short video, and I'm going to drop some donation links in here. Yes, CWSB, the candy has candy in it. This is an event that I went to with Al and Linda. Those of you who've been out here, Al and Linda are great people. Just run that all the way back to the beginning. I got to share it with sound, it's an actual news story, and I'll let it speak for itself.
Each year, just before the holidays, the Montana Legends gather at Harvest Foods in Big Fork to support veterans.
We started it just to give back to the people that gave to us.
The Montana Legends host an annual memorial motorcycle poker run for veterans the Saturday before Memorial Day weekend. The Legends raffle off a motorcycle each year during the event, with proceeds going directly to food insecure veterans in Northwest Montana.
Try to do it just before the holidays so all these people can have a good holiday dinner.
Montana Legends President J.P. Pettigrew says they partner with Harvest Foods in Big Fork to secure the food, fill up truckloads, and deliver the goods to the Northwest Montana Veterans Food Pantry in Kalispell.
We've been averaging anywhere from $15,000 to $35,000 worth of food that we give to them every year.
This year's donation equals 11 pallets of food filling up that truck, a retail value of $30,000.
So this means so much for us because it helps to fill our food boxes for the holidays, and it's going to have the stuffing and all the good stuff, the mashed potatoes and the gravy that we can use for our veterans.
Northwest Montana Veterans Food Pantry spokeswoman Cinnamon Davis Hall says they normally serve up to 300 veterans and their families during the holiday season.
It's a great way to honor our veterans and give that helping hand up to our homeless at-risk veterans that need that, and the emotional support that will come out of it too, being able to have that holiday meal with their family and friends.
JP says the Montana Legends have raised close to $500,000 for veterans in need over the last 16 years.
I think it's, overwhelming that we can support them like this.
In Big Fork, Sean Wells, MTN News.
Yeah, I had just been talking to him when he gave that interview. Just a fantastic bunch of people helping out the food pantry here. I dropped a donation link in there, and I had a question come up while I was gone. That if somebody wanted to send a check in, you just write Camp Ponderosa at the bottom of the check, and they know that it came from our people. And a lot of you might recognize Big Fork Foods. If you've been here to an event at Camp Ponderosa, we've gone to Big Fork Foods at some point in time. It's the only restaurant around. But it was really a great event. I'm glad I got invited to be a part of it. I was in the background there. We had a great time, and there's just pallets of turkeys and hams and all of the Thanksgiving dinner things. We're doing another event here on Saturday at Rosehour Foods, another grocery store in Kalispell, where they're doing a food drive in the parking lot all Saturday just to try and gear up for Thanksgiving coming up in a few days. So cool things. Awesome. These people do good stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's just awesome to see people doing stuff in their community, who have, they've given a lot and they continue to give, right?
Yeah. I was glad to see Al made the cut on the video. Al's a great guy who's done so much for veterans here in the area. And although he did attempt to steal a rifle yesterday, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Well, can you blame him, Joe? I mean, if it's just laying around,
I said, hey, I think I left something here that I brought by to show you earlier. He goes, no, I haven't seen it. I'm like, yeah,
you That's funny.
Anyway, good stuff.
All right. Watcher, how you doing? I hear it's a little cold where you're at too.
It's a bit chilly, yeah. Today's program is brought to you by electronically heated jackets and fleece-lined pants. That's that's a fact. But doing good. All the herd is doing well, and I'm happy about that because we were rather concerned for a while there.
Well, I hate to say it, but you kind of brought it on yourself, haven't you?
Oh, the cold? No, technically it should have been a lot warmer here than where I'm usually at. So,
well, I'm saying the conditions. You volunteered for these conditions.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. Also, if I'd have been home, it'd have been snowing like a month ago. There's like actively 4 or 5 inches on the ground out there. So it's not as cold as it would have been if I was out there. It's just out there I'd have, been in a heated building.
Yeah. All right. Anything else, guys, we need to talk about before we jump into the odds and ends for today? Going once, going twice. All right, let's jump right in. This is a Times of Israel story. I guess maybe they will talk about a peace deal with Hezbollah. Defense officials say major chance for Lebanon truce after U.S. envoy visits for talks. The irony, Joe, here lies in the fact that just the other day they said, "What are you talking about? We're not doing that." So I'm sure there are things happening behind the scenes that we are absolutely not privy to. Of course, that's happening, but this is kind of a 180, right?
Yeah. It's interesting, but they don't ever list who that defense official is.
Right.
So Lord knows where it could be, right? Or who it could be.
Well, it could still be copium, right? It could still be somebody with a little bit too much hope or optimism, because all it takes is Hezbollah to do one thing, and all of a sudden it's all for nothing. There's a substantial chance of Israel reaching a ceasefire agreement in Lebanon. A senior Israeli defense official told reporters Thursday, saying that a U.S.-backed agreement would see Hezbollah gradually withdraw north of the Litani River. This is the thing for me, Joe, that I think is actually fairly significant about this. If Israel can essentially regain security access to everything south of the Litani, that's a pretty damn good buffer zone for them, especially if they have the ability to patrol up in there.
Yeah, I mean, the Litani's always been sort of the solid geographic border they've wanted to secure, and this kind of gives them a good chance. There's a lot to be said for having a solid geographic border, because then there's no ambiguity about whose territory is which. That side of the river is yours, this side is mine. So I think that would be a big plus for them.
Well, and the interesting thing here is it says that under the ceasefire agreement, the Lebanese army would be responsible for preventing Hezbollah to reestablishing itself in southern Lebanon. Well, that is one of those kind of things where I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, the Lebanese army, I don't know if it's worth much, but hey. I mean, it must pay well because it keeps some guys from joining Hezbollah, I guess.
Well, yeah, but what does the Lebanese army actually control? Beirut proper? Nope.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean
they don't control all of it. So.
Oh, they're right, absolutely. Kind of along the coast to the north, I think of Beirut is fairly, because ultimately the only things they control are the parts that Hezbollah doesn't want.
Correct, or the Syrian army.
Or the Syrian army, because the Syrian army is in Lebanon. According to this defense official, if Israel sees Hezbollah attempting to rebuild infrastructure in southern Lebanon, it would notify the Lebanese army via the U.S. to act against the terror group. If no action is taken by the Lebanese army, Israel reserves the right to act, which makes a lot of sense, right? Essentially, I could see this agreement working if Israel basically has carte blanche to fix the problems themselves if Lebanon is either unwilling or unable to do it for them. The official added that the IDF will maintain the right to act to thwart any immediate attack, such as identifying Hezbollah operatives preparing to attack, carry out an attack, or a weapon shipment destined for the terror group. Watcher, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just love that there is now an official international, hey, are you going to come get your boy agreement?
I mean, that's essentially what it is.
let me address a comment in chat. One person's terrorist, another person's freedom fighter. That should never ever enter anyone's mind in relation to Hezbollah and Hamas.
Seriously,
they literally enslave their people, literally hold them hostage.
I shouldn't have to remind Pinochet that there is no such thing as a communist freedom fighter. There are only people fighting for authoritarian control of lesser minds. Is all they do. That's all communists do.
Yes, and they are communists. Just in case there's any doubt there.
Yeah, and real quick, and that does kind of disprove your little thesis there, as communists aren't people.
It's a good point. Yeah, Pinochet, I get it. We're just clarifying for the rest of the world. That
I like it. I'm not insane. Now we know when I see a guy like Pinochet's helicopter saying that, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, because Pinochet. If anything, we gotta pull Pinochet back on certain things, like places the preferred location of certain J dams within the District of Columbia. We need to kind of say whoa Nelly on some of that talk. All right. Let me continue on here. A senior Lebanese official told Reuters that Beirut wants changes to the U.S. proposal to ensure speedier withdrawal of Israeli troops from southern Lebanon. They will withdraw their troops when they're good and ready. Let's be honest. And Lebanon will be happy that to wait. They just are saying that up front. The official requested that changes during the meeting in Beirut this week with Hochstein, that's the U.S. envoy. The amendment sought by Lebanon, details of which have not previously been reported, indicate that Hochstein still has work to do to seal the ceasefire agreement, which he said was within our grasp. Now, one of the things that makes me doubt the validity of any of this is the fact that the Biden appointed, Secretary of State appointed envoy says that the deal is within our grasp, just like the election was within Harris's grasp. So that's the analytical ability that I think that they bring to this fight. So if anything, not much at all. Let's see. Of course, tellingly, a spokesman for Netanyahu did not immediately respond to questions about Israel's stance on the language of the truce. All right. Anything else about in the Israel portion of the world you guys want to mention or talk about? I mean, it's interesting, Joe, that the whole Syria thing has really, kind of gone to the back burner because it sure hasn't stopped. It's just, kind of petered out as far as things that people seem to want to talk about.
This reminds me of the meme, I'm going to fight these retards. Dang, there's a lot of them. That's kind of where Israel is at right now. I'm going to fight these Hezbollah and Hamas retards. Man, there's a lot of them. I think that Israel wants a breather as much as the other two sides do. But Israel has made her point in all of this that, hey, we do punch back and it's not very good. We actually punch way harder than you do.
Yeah.
So I hope that peace will break out, but I'm not actually positive because how many deals have they had with Hezbollah and Hamas where Hezbollah and Hamas have not honored them, but immediately screamed to the international community when Israel punches back at them?
Yeah.
As a great man once said, Joe, I've got a button too, and mine actually works.
Right.
Yeah.
It's also interesting, though, that this timing is coinciding with the return of Donald Trump to office. So,
well, one of the things that I just wanted to bring up was, Israel continues to be active. It's kind of like you said, Joe. There seems to be so many retards, right? Just the other day, we had Israeli strikes on Palmyra. They killed 36 in those strikes. I'm pretty sure that almost all those 36 are Syrian soldiers. But that being said, I'm sure that there are probably 36 Christian nuns and children, according to the Syrian media agency. Syrian. I just love all these Syrian headlines, right? Like this one. This is Fox News headline. He says Syrian national accused of funneling over $9 million in U.S. funded humanitarian aid to terrorists. Gosh, guys, I'm shocked that anybody in Syria might funnel U.S. aid to terrorist organizations. That just doesn't seem plausible. I mean, come on, that's what do they think we're going to believe this kind of nonsense?
It's all nonsense.
The fact that we're giving aid to anybody in Syria just
there's not a sincere actor on any side in Syria, including the U.S. So.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's I don't think we have any business there at this point. And then, of course, American troops are still in Syria. Just in case you didn't know this, they're partnered with the Syrian Defense Democratic Force. I can't remember what they're
Democratic
Forces. Yeah, Syrian Democratic SDF, Syrian Democratic Forces, and which is mainly Kurds in the kind of north.
Entire misnomer.
What's that?
One, they're not Syrian. Two, they're not democratic. And three, they're barely a force. So,
yeah. And well, the irony is that while they are majority Kurds, there is a good smattering of all the ethnicities within Syria in that area. It's kind of
none of them identify themselves as Syrians first.
Yeah, I mean that you could probably argue that. For instance, one of the guys I talked to when I was there said, "Yeah, well, yeah, I'm an Arab, right? That's how he identifies himself. I guess if I asked him if he considered himself Syrian, I think he probably had an issue with the fact that the Syrian government was trying to kill him at that point. So maybe that could have something to do with it.
That's actually part of life in the region, because what's the official name of the Syrian army? It is the Syrian Arab Army, which very distinctly excludes Yazidis, Kurds, Chaldeans, any of the others, right? So.
Well, and then of course the Assad regime what is that sect that they are? It's Alawite, right? And now, is that an ethnic group or is that a Muslim sect? I can't remember.
It's a sect and an offshoot of the Twelvers.
So. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I knew it was something like that, but I just couldn't place it. You can't have all the information in your head all the time. Peter Shea helicopter tour for $5 says, speaking of so many retards, at what point does the international community acknowledge that what the UN and the UNRWA's role in spurring all these conflicts get honestly addressed? Globalists, they never will. The UN will never address that. My understanding is that the Israelis have completely kicked UNRWA out of areas that they control, and they're not allowing them access to Gaza at all at this point.
At this point, there's literally no difference between UNRWA and Hamas.
That's correct. Because, I mean, here's the thing. Even if UNRWA was one of those kind of, good intentions, original good intentions, as always, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It is now completely infiltrated by Hamas. And all of the kind of incoming things have been corrupted to their usage. All right. Yeah, a lot of stuff going on in Syria still. It's just ironic that if the stuff going on in Syria was going on in anywhere else in the world, it would be huge news. But the fact that it's just going on in Syria, nobody cares.
Can someone tell me what the hell's going on here?
It's an invasion, sir.
Who was playing that?
Not me. I'm gonna assume it was Watcher.
That's what I assume too. He's not sharing.
Am I still muted? So. There we go. Yes. Sorry about that. Yes, something auto played when I was trying to find a clip.
Oh, okay. All right. That's what it was. But it was good timing though.
Yeah.
Guys,
it's from AI generated film Trump Force 2 Intergalactic Deportation.
I mean, it's AI generated. That's a big minus. But when you tell me it's about intergalactic deportation, I mean, I'm all for that. Anything else on Israel you guys want to cover? All right. Nothing heard.
On that story, no, but I'm rather interested in the next one.
Yeah, let's talk about this. This seems to be a thing, right, Joe? Chinese agents everywhere you turn, whether they're trying to get on military bases or they're trying to, get documents from defense contractors. It's just seems to be a thing.
There's a lot of actual open conflict in the U.S. between the Chinese government and Shenyang. So Shenyang is a group of Chinese defectors who travel around the country to expose Americans to real Chinese culture, which is thousands of years old. They actually put on some pretty good shows, but they've had attempted kidnappings, they've had beatings, they've had all kinds of things at the hands of the MSS throughout America, using third-party cutouts. So this does not surprise me one bit.
Well, and what's interesting is the form of the agent. So let me get to that. A Chinese agent who tried to bribe the IRS and manipulate the agency into advancing Beijing's transnational repression of a U.S. nonprofit has received a 20-month prison sentence. U.S. citizen, first and foremost, John Chen, 72, was a principal actor in a $50,000 bribery scheme under the direction of a Chinese intelligence official to revoke the nonprofit status of a New York-based Shenyang Performing Arts. I mean, there's a lot to unpack in that one sentence.
It's proof that China is behind a lot of the lawfare we see going on.
Well, that and any of any activity by a Chinese somebody is of Chinese descent, despite their citizenship within the U.S., that is pro-CCP is absolutely almost 95% chance has some sort of intelligence backing by the CCP. And part of this is the understanding of how Chinese view race and citizenship and all this kind of stuff. We in America, we have an individualistic idea, like your citizenship is conferred to you as an individual, and it means a lot to you, and that's who you become because you give a personal oath, right? But the Chinese don't believe that you can actually become anything other than Chinese. It's like everything else is just legal classifications. Ultimately, you're still Chinese.
More accurately, they believe that if you are of Chinese, if you have a single drop of Chinese blood, you belong to the Chinese Communist Party.
Yes.
And regardless of what you want, and they're willing to do anything, short of, physical harm on family members still remain in China.
That is absolutely not short of. They are absolutely willing to do.
Oh, I said not short of. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Up to and not, and including, threatening and taking action against your family members who are still in China, even if they are like distant family members. Hell, I'll be honest with you. I'd feel bad if somebody said that I'm going to kill a stranger if you don't do this, because, we as individuals, we care about, but as those collective family ties are very strong, even if you don't know the person. So Shenyang has long been a Chinese regime's target list. Founded in 2006, the company tours around the world to display the ancient Chinese culture that prevailed before the communist takeover of China, while highlighting the human rights abuses under the regime's rule. Ursula Theodoros for $20 says, "Good morning, CFC. Speaking of culture, just rewatched Lord of the Rings, Fellowship, aka Recon Patrol NZ. Ages so well. Now I need a broadsword." Yeah, I feel you. Don't we all need broadswords?
Yes.
That's an interesting take on it, but it kind of is. Yeah.
Recon Patrol ends.
Let me. Okay, so this I hate to get diverted, but he did say now he needs a broadsword.
Yeah.
If you could buy like a real steel, not like a kind of show sword, like a real steel sword, what type of sword would you get?
Well, I have a Shinwa real sword. Mine is a Korean Gumdo sword, and it is no joke. It's about 42 inches long, two-handed. Pretty nice.
I wouldn't mind a Scottish Claymore. I'm just saying, a weapon that's got so much mass to it that even if the blade is dull,
you're big enough to handle that thing. Those of you who haven't met Watcher in real life, Watcher is literally a Nephilim. Just so you know.
I have been credibly accused, yes.
Now, Joe, is that the straight sword or is that the Japanese style curved?
It's Japanese style, but don't dare ever call anything Korean Japanese.
I know this. That's definitely where those swords came from, though. Don't ever tell a Korean that. But I like the military straight swords. I don't know. I guess that predated the when the 1500. I think those kundos really got popular after the 1500s when right before the Tokugawa and all that kind of stuff.
Well, mine is kind of similar to Admiral Yi's. So
yeah. I'll be honest with you guys. It's not sexy, but I think if I had a real kind of like battle grade sword, I would choose a Roman Gladius. I feel like that's something I could actually use because it's short enough to where like I could use it for as a household utensil.
Short, man. Why is everybody going short? I'm telling you, man. Right now, if I had to go Japanese, I'd go with a naginata. It's a blend between a spear and a longsword. Like reach, you need reach.
Yeah, I wouldn't want a naginata.
A couple of the guys that I train with like to use the naginata. I'm afraid I'm gonna cut off my feet.
Well, there's that
with the naginata, but they are pretty sweet. I would also not skimp on the Mameluke sword. The
Marine yeah, facts. Hard facts.
Joe. More of a scimitar, but not a bad sword.
Well, another one that I've always had a penchant for was, and of course, this has a show tie-in, right? Is the old? I think it's the 1806 pattern infantry straight sword. That's the one that that Sharp always carried around. I actually looked it up, and it's like a real thing. And because most officers carried the saber style swords at that point, but he in the book he was always written that that's a real killing tool for killing versus something for show. So and I looked it up, and it's pretty badass. And let's see. I like that there's some appreciation for the Gladius in the chat. Thank you very much. Two-handed longsword, Let's see. What else do we got?
Nobody said flamberge.
No dachi, if you're going Japanese style.
I'm looking for a matching wakizashi to go with my sword, but it's been hard to find.
Hear that, chat? If you're looking for a spicy Christmas present for old Joe.
Yeah, right. And Doc, I see his sword bayonets are pretty cool too. I have a sword bayonet here. It's actually very cool.
That's awesome.
All right, let's. I feel like doing show and tell. I mean,
the bayonet that went on the. Hold on though, I got a bayonet nerd here for a minute. The bayonet that went on the original 1897 Trent shotgun was technically a sword bayonet due to the length, and I have one of those. So
that's nice.
So this is the link that.
It's not even expensive. That's just
be nice. Prepared. Put in. Yeah, this is. So there's a Roman Gladius. So the interesting thing is that the longer they go, the older they go, the longer they get, right? So the Gladiuses from that were really popular in the late Empire were like a full foot longer than this style that was popular around the time of like Julius Caesar. So it's kind of interesting how swords develop and that type of thing. Yeah, the Gladius is really good as an infantry sword. Use the point, right? You don't slash with it. It's a thrusting weapon, right? But as they started integrating more cavalry and things like that, you need a longer, something that's a little longer. So,
yeah,
Bud K.
Cool. Bud K is for people who don't know any better. Go to buy knives.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see the thing for me that when I see all this, I see this price point. I'm like, no, this is not what you want. I mean, I hate to say it, like a really good weapon is going to be $500 and up.
Yeah.
I see the spear has made its appearance in the chat. I have one, but if you're going to talk spears, you need the Zulu Asengai spear, the little, the short spears that they carried.
If not a scimitar, then a rapier.
Look, man, I like fencing as much as the next guy, but a rapier's not hyper useful in the modern context, I feel.
The rapier is just a fancy word for gay man's sword.
Yeah.
All right, by the way, Earthless Theodorus, because your super chat got us off on this tangent, I'll close out with you. Anyone read Dies the Fire? Very cool exploration of historical and improvised edged weapons, depending on resource and style. So, guys, let me, Joe, we talk about a lot of books that that explore what happens when the shit hits the fan, right? This Dies in the Fire series. I don't know if you've ever read it before, but it is a very interesting kind of exploration in that, because they lose the ability to use all electrical energy, right? So anything that's like high energy won't, there's something has changed in physics, right? And it basically is shit hits the fan, but it with unique physical properties. So everybody ends up going to a medieval style tech base. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah, Sterling wrote that. That's a good series, though it gets weird because like there are people who start speaking Elvish in it because they are like huge token nerds, and I'm like, why would you do that?
In response to the Atticus question, one of the weirdest things I always felt about my NCO sword was the Star of David on it. I found that very, very odd on a United States Marine Corps NCO sword. But it is there.
Is that standard?
And it's traditional. It's from the time it was awarded to us back in Tripoli.
Yeah, they were the only NCOs allowed to carry sabers back in the day. So,
all right. So once again, I think we explored the broad topic of Chinese are, even when they are on our side, you gotta watch them. Because they do have, built-in risk because of those family ties.
But back to this, the other side of this is, man, I'm gonna tell you, like some of the actual decent used to be freedom-loving people that I knew, people who used to be huge advocates for freedom. You need to be very careful out there, folks, because I'm telling you, Chinese propaganda can get to and take from you people who you least expect. Multiple different people that I knew that were formerly in the Liberty Movement have decided that these guys are just crazy religious fanatics, and China's right to go after them. If you know anything at all about the history involved here, nothing could possibly be further from the truth. Falun Gong wasn't even a religion; it was an exercise and meditation movement. And then, in case you're wondering why I'm talking about Falun Gong when we're supposed to be talking about Shen Yun, it's because Shen Yun is mostly made up of and funded by Falun Gong practitioners who fled to the West when they were killed, thrown into internment camps, and having their organs harvested while they still lived. Had that happen to their children in front of them. Literally some of the most evil, barbaric shit you could possibly imagine.
Yeah. And, of note, and for full disclosure, this article originally appeared in the Epoch Times, which is itself financed by Falun Gong, Pro Falun Gong Foundation, I think is probably the best way to put it, and speaks out regularly against CCP. So, I mean, you got to understand there is a slant to this article that's biased against China. Now, I'm also biased against China, so I'm okay.
Justifiably so.
Yeah, I was going to say, in the same way that I'm sure if the Nazis were still around, Jewish publications would also not be very pleasant towards.
Exactly. And just like we are not, despite the fact that we don't condone everything Israel's doing, we definitely ain't no fans of Hamas, right? We're not going to say any boo against Hamas because those guys are absolute bad guys. All right. On to our next and final. We talked about Israel early on. I guess we should have put these two together because, but ultimately the point here for me is less to do with Israel and more to do with the International Criminal Court and international law, or shall I say, the fantasy that is international law. International Criminal Court issues arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. I'm here to tell you guys that this just goes to show you who's willing to sell their sovereignty for the highest dollar in the international place. It's like I said, it's a fantasy. It's not a real thing.
Well, to be fair, I mean, the ICC is indeed, if I'm not mistaken, where ultimate legal LARPer Jack Smith was for the last decade, correct?
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, Jack Smith. Yeah.
All right. So, ooh boy.
Let me read a little bit here. The ICC has issued an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and a senior Hamas official, accusing them of war crimes. The only reason why that Hamas official is named is because he's the only one, I guess, that's left. Most of their officials are dead now. In statements on Thursday, the Netherlands-based court. So here's the other thing too, right? It may be physically based in Netherlands, but ultimately it has no direct connection to the. It is like literally a private organization that governments join. The Netherlands-based court said it found reasonable grounds to believe that Netanyahu bears criminal responsibility for war crimes, including starvation as a method of warfare. Never mind the fact that the food that was given to the people in Gaza was immediately stolen and then redistributed by Hamas. Let's see. Crimes against humanity of murder, persecution, and other inhumane acts. Guys, I mean, this is just... I'll let you kind of opine before I continue.
What is there to opine on? It's absolutely ludicrous. It's ridiculous. They file international criminal court warrants on all kinds of people, but it's not a thing. It literally has no teeth.
I was just going to say, I'm pretty sure it has about as much effect as if the local student high school council decided that they were going to issue an arrest document. Okay, who the fuck cares?
Or like all these cities issuing proclamations that they don't support the Israeli war in Gaza. Okay, it means literally nothing.
I mean, Joe, this is one of those kind of things where, it's like I want to smell my own farts on a global scale. So how can I do that? Oh, well, we can just kind of write bad letters, like strongly worded letters against Benjamin Netanyahu. Also, you could name leaders that they would never get their hands on, and that would also be Benjamin Netanyahu. That's like like issuing an arrest warrant for Donald Trump, right? The ICC would never be, even the Democrats wouldn't serve Donald Trump up to the ICC.
Right.
Because you got to, at least we've been consistent. American politicians have consistently said, oh, hell no, when it comes to, things like the ICC and other some of these other kind of broader international organizations.
Karen makes the point in the chat that the Queen was convicted of genocide twice by the ICC. Ironically, the Queen who freed more people on the planet from her rule than anyone else in history, right?
I mean, it's unreal. Anyway, let me continue on with this story. Israel the Prime Minister's office dismissed the warrants as absurd and anti-Semitic. Yes. Oddly enough, the anti-Semitic remark counts towards all three of them, Joe, because even the Hamas guy, despite the fact that he's a godless murderer of the, and a self-proclaimed Muslim, is still probably Semitic as well. He's probably not an Arab.
Correct.
He's a Semitic person. Israel utterly rejects the absurd and false actions and accusations against it by the International Criminal Court, which is a politically based and discriminatory body, his office said, adding there was no more war. There is no war more just after the Hamas terrorist organization launched a murderous attack against it, carrying out the largest massacre against the Jewish people since the Holocaust. He ain't wrong. Netanyahu said he will not yield to pressure, will not back down, and will not retreat until all the goals of the war set by Israel at the start of the campaign are achieved. Israel, like the United States, is not a member of the ICC and has challenged the court's jurisdiction over its actions in the conflict. I will remind you that many U.S. citizens were called before the ICC during the Iraq invasion. Even early on, not like after 20 years of consideration, John Smith, you were a bad boy in Fallujah, so we're gonna bring a charge against you. No. It was literally like while we were still fighting in Baghdad. You shot at some reporters, so we're gonna put you in the clink.
How's the ICC warrant against Joseph Kony going?
I know, right? Was it 2012? This is a year we get Kony, right?
Yeah. And Arctic Boy says, Trudeau said he would honor the ICC's word and arrest Netanyahu. Good luck. Shin Bet is not someone I would go up against if I was in the Canadian CSIS. It would not go well. So
yeah. Israel, like the U.S., is not a member of the ICC and has challenged their jurisdiction. The ICC claims jurisdiction over territories Israel occupies, including Gaza, East Jerusalem, and the West Bank, following the Palestinian leadership's formally agreement to be bound to the court's founding principles. Yeah, of course they're going to say, they want to be bound to because they're always going to get a favorable go against Israel. Let's see. The court on Thursday also issued a warrant for a Hamas official who Israel says was one of the masterminds of the October 7th attack. Israel said it killed him in an airstrike in July, but Hamas hasn't confirmed his death. Yeah, he's probably dead. And that's the reason why they decided, let's indict a dead man. We don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, let's indict a dead man. Instead of a ham sandwich this time, let's go with a dead man.
Yeah. I have an appropriate response prepared for just such an occasion.
Let's see. Guys who don't meet their appearance, that guy was a legit body stacker in his day, by the way.
I have heard that story, but I've never seen any evidence of it. What is the deal with him again?
He was a sniper.
He was in.
That's the word on the street. Yeah, legit sniper.
Yeah. Is it true that John Denver was in as well?
I know he served, but I don't know what he did.
Yeah, it seems like I heard he was a sniper at one point too, but that just kind of beyond credulity. And when Chris Christopherson was a Ranger, that's another one.
Yeah. Chris Christopherson was a helicopter pilot.
Murgu, member for 3 months, said good morning. He may have gone to Ranger school then.
Yeah.
Let's Chris. I'll fact check that one. That's one of those that I just heard, so I don't want to be wrong.
If you want to know about Chris Christopherson's military history, Matt is the guy to talk to.
Oh yeah.
Because Chris Christopherson was one of the original highwaymen, so
yeah.
Matt's the highwayman all about the outlaw country, so.
Yeah, Yep. So he completed Ranger school. He was he became a helicopter pilot after receiving flight training at Fort Rucker. He completed Ranger school. So yes, he was a Ranger. Well, he wasn't a Ranger, but he had a Ranger tab.
It was a short tab, not a long tab.
Yeah. Yep. And he was given an assignment to teach English literature at West Point. Instead, he decided to leave the Army and pursue songwriting.
There's one thing that needs to be said. There are people in the chat asking who is Chris Christopherson, and y'all disappoint.
You all need to get some Jesus in your life if you don't know who Chris Christopherson is. Corgie's right. Don't discount helo crews. Yeah, there were a lot of helo pilots that saved a lot of lives in Vietnam.
Most of the stories that the Marines are taught in their code of conduct training, which I don't think anyone does anymore, but were all pilots. So all the EPW resistors and escapees and whatever. But anywho, we are completely derailed. Let's roll back to the...
Yeah. Well, at least it's an interesting topic there. All right. Moving on. Yeah. So
that's
guys,
not an updated photo because he should be dead in that photo if it was an updated photo.
Exactly right. I don't really want to talk any more about Israel in this. You guys got any more thoughts on? I mean, where are all the indictments from Ukraine? For all the.
They're there for Putin.
Well, right, but they're the bad guys, Joe. I mean, obviously they're going to be there for the bad guys. I mean, hell, Putin probably had indictments on him before the Ukraine war even started. I mean, like I saw some recent. I think it was a Russian soldier. He was surrendering. He was completely unarmed. He was trying to surrender to a drone. The drone was kind of flying around him, and then they go to the second drone that's watching from a further way away. If the guy's got his hands up, and then the drone jives in on him and blows him up. So clearly, the Ukrainians are A-OK and the ICC.
There's a lot of people who like to make fun of me saying things are war crimes, but that's literally a war crime.
That is literally, he is trying to surrender. If somebody is trying to surrender and you have no, like if he's trying to surrender, you see the bomb vest under it. That's one thing to put that guy down because he's not really trying to surrender. Yeah. But the ICC, guys, is just one of those things that kind of sticks in my craw. I get it had a point at one point, but ultimately international agreements should be short-term things. They take care of a specific problem and then you dissolve them because you can't trust them in the long term. Mm-hmm. Treaties are that way too, right? Like the what is it? The International Convention Against Landmines or whatever. What a absolute garbage waste of time that thing is.
But it felt good on paper.
Well, yeah, right. It's a feel-good law, right? This is the kind of things that limousine.
And by the way, we were one of the biggest champions of it. And what are we doing now?
And we don't
authorizing the indiscriminate use of landmines.
We're shipping now anti-personnel landmines to them. Now, Joe.
Well, let's be honest about why that is.
Why?
That went into that.
If you're going to say something like that, you got to follow it up.
This is totally going to prevent Ukraine from losing the war. No, the problem, the reason that we did it is so that there'd be defense contractor contracts for the next 5 decades to remove landmines from Ukraine.
I think there's an even more sinister purpose in there. They know they're going to get overused because that's kind of the Slavic way with landmines, as we saw in Yugoslavia. And when civilians start dying in large numbers, we're going to make the claim that they are Russian landmines. So,
yep.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think. Maybe this is. Yeah. So let's do that. All right, guys. Our next topic kind of brings us into Ukraine, so we'll hold landmine talk until the next topic. Before we do that, Joe, why don't you talk to him about what's going on with tactical-wisdom.com on this week?
Literally nothing.
Oh, come on, Joe.
There's a reason for that. We may be changing everything up and removing a whole lot of services and things that we provide. More to come. I got nothing to say.
All right. Well, I hope it's all good. It's all for the good.
Hey, I'm not in charge here. So,
Mama's in charge. All right. Sounds good, brother. We will. We'll talk more in the future. All right. Let's jump into our main topic today. Putin's reign. I thought maybe I was too clever by half on this topic, but I don't think so. And when you look at this video, you don't have to pull. I tell you what, watcher on that one. Just we're gonna try to continue our model of less reading and more talking. Let's just kind of pull this up. Joe, give me your first. I guess it was a couple hours after the show the other day on Wednesday is when all this stuff was. When did it happen? This was daytime for you guys.
Yeah, it would have been daytime here, nighttime there.
I want to say I woke up to it on Thursday.
So a couple of things about this. Number one is this was a clear warning from Russia to the West, and we're not going to listen. Now, when I said we on there, everyone got yelling at me. Oh, I'm listening. I didn't mean we as in the people who watch the show. I mean we as a collective West, and the governments won't listen. They'll do what they want.
The current administration specifically.
Yeah. And Steve, you're right. There was Russian missiles don't work. Somebody goes, they're not precision guided. Well, they struck exactly where Russia said they were going to strike, in a defense industrial complex. So that's the other piece of this. Don't buy into the NAFO propaganda. This hit a residential area. It hit a defense industrial plant that was manufacturing, I don't know what, but some sort of war material. So it was a legitimate target. But it was a pretty significant escalation in not just in the Russo-Ukrainian war, but in warfare in general. No one has ever done this before. And it was kind of a big, hey, man, I'm serious this time. You need to stop kind of message that they were sending.
You know, the interesting thing that I noticed on that video, watch before we go into the Putin stuff, let's focus on what we actually saw, kind of, because if you remember, it was like what 6-8 hours before we got the Putin announcement. There was a lot. It was a lot of rumor control. Everybody, to myself included, said, "Hey, first use of ICBMs in an actual shooting war." Now in retrospect, that appears to not necessarily be the case, but it's kind of like saying, oh, well, it's like saying he didn't get shot with a 12 gauge. Oh, it was a 16 gauge. Okay, well, it still blew his chest out,
his arm off, yeah.
Right. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, so okay, whatever. Ultimately, it doesn't. You're. I don't know. Somebody in a private DM to me, hey, they tried to kind of sharpshoot me. You said it's the first time you're using an ICBM. In fact, I think it was probably MRBM or IRBM or something like that. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right, but that's a little on the pedantic side, right? Joe, the key thing for me that I keyed in on, and it made me say ICBM at first, was the fact that, and I think we will look at it later. I think maybe Watcher, if you go to the second story there, I think there's an image in there that's a actual photograph of the things. Yeah. If you go down, there's an OSINT tactical tweet in the middle of that TWZ story. It actually shows the MIRVs coming in. And yeah, it's kind of towards the middle of the story. And there are 6 of these kind of beams of light coming down. And what are those beams of light? Well, those are things going between Mach 10 and Mach 12 that are burning, it's burning through the atmosphere. That's it. That's the one right there. And you can easily see that there are 6 of them. And what that tells you is that, okay, that's 6 MIRVs from one missile coming in. Well, what does that say about the missile? Well, the older, like SS-20 missile only had 3 MIRVs in it. And the only missiles that had those bigger strike packages, which is 4, 6, and even more than that. The YARS and ICBM, I think, can have up to like 12 or 18 or something like that. Are ICBMs, right? Because of the diameter, right, Joe? It's like it has to be thick to get that many in there. And so when I saw this, I was like, this is an ICBM, right? Now it comes to find out it was in fact an IRBM or an MRBM. I can't remember what the classification is.
They both have the same range envelope, so
right. Yeah, very similar, right? It's almost like you're just kind of it's not worth arguing over. But ultimately, this was not like a short range, missile like like we see that's been used, like the North Korean missiles or the what's the Russian one that was used early in the war?
Kinzhal.
Kensal and the Topals, those are the older ones. The Kensal's the newer ones, and then even the what is it, Zircon? Those are the naval, I think, version of the Kensals. So these missiles don't have these kind of MIRV packages in them. And so what does this mean? What is a MIRV? Okay, so MIRV stands for multiple independent reentry vehicle. And in a traditional nuclear weapons and ICBMs, each MIRV is a independently targeted nuclear bomb, right? And normally they are set to go off airburst. They kind of come down, and it's like a shotgun, right? It spreads out over an area, and it covers a broader area from one missile. And included in that are decoys. I mean, it's an entire package, right? Some have more decoys, some have less decoys. The idea is it makes it hard to shoot these things down. And Joe, one of the things that became, I think, very obvious to Ukraine, and you saw the commentary, was that their military said we had nothing that could shoot these things down.
And that's 100% true, right?
Yeah, because
every experiment we've ever done with an anti-ballistic missile system has failed. We have come close, but we have not actually broken through on this. So that's kind of why I think he did this, right? Was trying to say, hey, look, I got this tool. You can't defeat it. Maybe it's time to not poke the bear so much.
Yeah, I think that's well, Joe, my tweet was kind of like, this is him saying I'm not fucking around, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And this does kind of go to that aspect of, like one of the things I said that Putin could do as a response would be some sort of a nuclear demonstration on Russian soil, right? Well, this is kind of the inverse of it. This is a nuclear weapon delivery system, but it is used against a target not in Russia. And it shows just how quickly those things come in. I mean, if you see it, literally looks like, like golden rain falling down.
Well, instead of interpreting him, why don't we just listen to the man's own words?
Yeah. So anyway, let me just kind of timeline this. So this all stuff started coming out. There was a lot of speculation. I think before Putin spoke was information came out from the Pentagon, and I think the Pentagon info was actually pretty accurate based on what I saw reported. And then the Putin's thing came out, and I think if the
ICBM versus IRBM argument's the wrong one to have. The real one to have is, was it a tank?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And Michael Tracy is pretty sure that it either is a tank or was shot from a tank.
Yes.
Yeah. The thing that shot the missile
was a tank.
Was a 17-wheeled tank. The tail launcher. All right. No, that's it.
Yeah, I was going to let that go by.
See, it just goes to show that my people are in the audience. I appreciate that.
I just want to know if the Russians spray painted a Calvin sticker on the front of it first, but that's all
right. All right. Let's.
I would like to point out that if you didn't catch us live last night, you may want to go over to Podbean and check out Sons of Liberty from last night, because Matt's monologue followed by my monologue at the beginning were legit straight fire about where you are in the world right now. And somebody in our chat brought it up. I don't remember who it was, but yes, there is indeed an IRBM complex on Cuba. And the point that we made last night is that he's going to put these missiles there, and there's nothing anyone's going to do about it. And the Cuban Missile Crisis is going to look like a walk in the park compared to this. Most people forget that the Cuban Missile Crisis was a response, once again, to the U.S. placing nuclear missiles in Turkey.
In Turkey, right. Exactly right.
And it was Russia responding to us.
But in Joe, in this day, there is a nuclear capable submarine, Russian submarine, docked right now at Cuba.
Yes.
You know, the one of the few areas where they've maintained some competency within their Navy throughout this time has been in their nuclear forces. Because
the Russian
they
boomers are no joke. Yeah.
That's right. They have to maintain that portion of their triad, right, in order to kind of guarantee their security.
Well, I mean, does Russia still have a nuclear triad, or is it more of a nuclear pole?
No, the triad is silo based. It is air based, so like bombers, and then it is.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying. Is we have not maintained our Minutemen to appropriate standards. Has Russia, who has had far less funding and
well,
stuff?
here. Let me just tell you this, Watcher. The missiles shot in Ukraine are part of the land-based triad. So you tell me if they're ready and able to fire.
So are they moving to a mobile thing then? That's kind of what I'm.
They've always had their land-based triad has always been a mixture of mobile and silo-based missiles.
Okay. Yeah, no, it just seems to me the specific conversation I'm trying to have is that it seems to me that the silo-based missiles were a mistake in the first place. It's a static target that's easily identifiable and hit. As well as they're far more difficult to maintenance because that is a deep underground facility. It requires maintenance all on its own. They're hyper expensive, and it's really easy to let something that's already sitting in a hole in the ground just rot.
So I can address this thing from Rick if you'd like. I know you can too.
Yeah, I was going to, but I'll let you take first.
Any attack sub now in the Russian inventory is nuclear capable, which is what Scott said.
Yeah,
and the Poseidon torpedo is a nuclear torpedo that can be fired out of it. Just because it's an attack sub doesn't mean it's not a nuclear capable submarine. So,
yeah, that's actually a really good point, Joe. I mean, this is an attack submarine, and for instance, our Los Angeles class attack subs and the Seawolf and the Virginia class attacks all have the ability to fire nuclear. What is it? The
T-Lambs.
Tomahawk. Yeah, it was. Well, no, T-Lambs are the land-based ones. I almost said T-Lamb. Right. It's Tomahawk. And so even those can fire nuclear weapons. Now, I know for a fact that they don't all carry nuclear weapons, but that doesn't mean they're not capable, right? We have F-16s that are nuclear capable. That doesn't mean they carry.
It's like the AN-126 is a nuclear capable bomber. Doesn't mean it always carries nukes, right? So
I would be remiss in my duties as the show's meme master if I didn't highlight these two comments.
Well, I mean, nobody's arguing with you there.
That's very good. That's very good. Another piece to this. S2 Underground was kicking himself yesterday. I don't know if anyone saw this, but he was going to put in his wire the day before this strike happened that it was interesting that the Russian version of the Doomsday planes were all in the air and one was headed east from Moscow just a couple hours before this strike happened. And he said he didn't want to report it because it seemed over the top, but it turns out it was exactly true. It was an indicator that a strike was about to happen. So, pretty interesting.
Somebody in the chat's asking, are Davy Crockett still in inventory? I mean, technically, but after testing, I believe they decided to never deploy those.
Yeah, everything is still in the inventory. I just don't know that it's active.
Yeah, I think a lot of so for instance, the Pershing 2s are all out. Unlike most airplanes and other systems, right, that we leave in the boneyard for years and years and years, all the nuclear stuff that was covered under any of our arms reduction treaties had to be destroyed. So that was one of the reasons why we destroyed all of the B1s that were nuclear capable versus the older B1s were B1s. And then some of the nuclear capable B-52s were allowed to be because they were still in the. But that was the thing. Like we had to count airplanes in the boneyard as part of our nuclear arsenal, right? Which was kind of weird. And then like the Pershing missiles, which was our IRBM or SRBM from the 70s. All those had to get deactivated and kind of cut apart because they were all nuclear capable and were then covered under the what is it, the IRC intermediate band. Anyway, I can't remember all the.
I'd be very curious to see if we still have the old genies in stock. That'd be nuclear capable anti air to air missile.
No, we don't. None of those are. Those were completely, they're just completely, now what may exist still are the actual warheads from all these various systems. But the actual systems themselves are scrap. Diatica had it, the INF. All right, let's
forces. Yes.
Do we have a copy of the Putin speech with subtitles?
No, but this one's got an English translator.
Oh, okay.
The further course of action will be determined based on the threats to the security of the Russian Federation. We believe that we have the right to use our weapons against military facilities of countries who allow their weapons to be used against ours. And in case of an escalation, we will act as decisively in a mirror fashion. The ruling elites of the countries are nurturing plans to use their military contingents against Russia should be warned.
And then, of course, so what started all this? Now, we talked about this on Wednesday, but it's worth kind of covering again. Essentially, last week, President Biden, followed by a quick concurrence. Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you. That's once you know what it is, it's very creepy, right? Watching that. Both England and the United States confirmed to Ukraine that they were good to go to use long-range strike weapons that we had given them against targets within Russia. Now, they did limit some of that. They asked them not to target energy sector things within Russia. There were some caveats went to that, but Joe, that's the kind of thing that's just like, oh, well, we said they couldn't do this. Well, I mean. Russia didn't say, oh, well, as long as you don't hit our energy, stuff, we won't think it's, an act of war. No, they said any target within Russia by NATO weapons provided to Ukraine would be essentially a declaration. They would consider that a declaration of war by the U.S. or the UK or any other country that allows Ukraine to do that, which I totally understand. Now, Joe, I can't remember if it was you or Watcher was saying before the show started. What did you hear about targeting assistance by the U.S. against?
Last night, when everyone was debating whether or not the Ukrainian counterstrike was drones or not, we pointed out that it was most likely Storm Shadows, and then the United Kingdom came out somewhere on Twitter and confirmed that it was indeed Storm Shadows that had U.S. and U.K. targeting assistance.
Yeah,
which is really walking right up to the line and putting 1 foot over it, right? I don't have that tweet in front of me, but it was happening live while we were on a show, and I didn't get a chance to save it, but was out there.
I was really surprised that ATACMS actually outranges Storm Shadow. ATACMS is 300 kilometers, whereas Storm Shadow is 250.
Huh.
I thought the Storm Shadow went further, but I guess it's really not that big.
It's not that big, yeah. Doesn't have much fuel space.
All right, guys, let's get into what this weapon that Russia used was, just so people have a better understanding of kind of what this really meant. There's a really good. There's actually a couple good stories over on the War Zone that really kind of dive into this. But ultimately, this is a secret variant of the RS-26 intermediate range ballistic missile.
Hold on, okay. Kilveris, you win the day. You win the day. Well done.
Amen. Amen. Well, let's be honest. The best issues of G.I. Joe were the ones where neither of them came out on top. It was more of a draw. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to say that the greatest G.I. Joe story of all times was G.I. Joe number 21, Silent Interlude. Drawn by Larry Hama, the
dude
writer of
Focus.
Hey man, he said Snake Eyes, and I went down the rabbit hole. But I can come right back out anyway. So we're talking about the RS-26 IRBM. So the interesting thing is that this is not. So the RS-26 is not what they use. The RS-26 is a system that is no longer in use. It was seen as maybe a kind of a dead end. It took the I think it's the RS-24 YARS ICBM, and then they basically based a smaller version. Like I think it had one less stage in it. So it had the top of a YARS missile and the bottom of a YARS missile, but it had one of the intermediate stages taken out of it. So that shortened its range. And so ultimately that is a missile based on that is what was used. And not this, what we're seeing on this is very cool. This is the hypersonic glide vehicle, but this is not what was used.
I thought this was Kerbal Space Program too. Oops.
Kerbal's. Yeah, right. That's what it looks like, right? Let's see. What I wanted to read something here that just kind of succinctly said what it is. So basically, this was a ballistic missile that had a range between 1,860 to 3,410 miles. That's that IRBM range. And it was fired from like near Rostov-on-Don area. So over the Black Sea into, if you notice how it doesn't come at an angle, it comes literally straight down. What that indicates is that as a kind of a close shot, right, like within its like maybe minimum range, it basically went up and then straight back down, right? This was not like it was a very ballistic trajectory, and so that's why
nerds. It was like NVIS, up and straight down. But
there
anyway.
You go. Let's see. The Ukrainian military initially reported that the missile struck Dnipro was an ICBM. So that was the Ukrainian claim. So, anybody who said ICBM, at least they had the Ukrainian military kind of backing their call.
Well, because they've been known to be honest and open.
Well, they didn't know what the fuck was happening. They just had to make a best guess based on their information.
No, they had to make a worst case scenario for funding.
Well, I don't know that this is much different than a worst case scenario, but at least practically speaking, right? But you're right. I mean, absolutely. Once they realized that their bacon was out of the fire, I mean, Joe, from the looks of these, I didn't even see any conventional warheads on these. I think these were purely kinetic impacts.
Well, that's kind of the conventional thinking, is that it was sort of a rods from God type thing, right? Tungsten rods dropped in, which, by the way, do a significant amount of damage when they hit the ground. So just because you didn't see an explosion doesn't mean that there wasn't anything going on. By the way, Be Prepared mentions it in the Rumble chat. EAMs, if you monitor the EAMs, the emergency action messages at the Sky King network, it was wild last night. Messages went out all over the world from the U.S. Air Force headquarters. So pretty crazy.
Yeah, I I was wondering about that, and I figured you could kind of fill us in. How about the some of the kind of auxiliary civilian networks? How were those kind of being used when
a few people stood some of theirs up. I'm going to talk to Matt today about maybe over the weekend we stand up the Radio Recon Net that we run, and a few others like the Montana Information Net was up and running. Amron is up their level. You know what? It's a good time to get out your radios and make sure they're charged and make sure you can make contact with someone right now, so that afterward you got someone to reach. But there was a lot going on last night. So EAMs are just the Air Force notifying everybody of what's going on in a coded manner. You can't hear the information, but the fact that so many one-time pad messages went out last night tells you that the United States military changed their alert level and had some things going on. So it's really a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly the kind of 2 minute to midnight kind of situation. Yeah, I hate to say it. I don't want to be too bellicose, but at the same time, Joe, you can't overstate it. I can't think of a time since the Cuban Missile Crisis that we've been closer to an actual nuclear war.
I would say we're actually closer than the Cuban Missile Crisis because we've already had a missile in the air.
Let me ask you this, and I want both of your comments on this. I asked you guys what the chance of some sort of a nuclear strike or something like that. I asked you that on Wednesday. Now, given this kind of Putin's, demonstration of his seriousness, does that change your kind of your computations on likelihoods?
Let me modify mine. I still think there's a 0 chance of a nuclear confrontation unless we initiate it. But I believe there is a 100% chance of some sort of Russian kinetic action on materiel in transit. And what I mean by that is a ship seizure on the high sea, a ship sinking, a plane shoot down, something, because Russia needs to let us know that the Ho Chi Minh Trail needs to stop, that we've crossed the line. And good, bad, or indifferent, this is a time for both sides to take a breather and step back. And I know people will call me a Putin shill for this. All these people cheering on war don't realize where this ends, and they think that this will be just like World War I or World War II, and they'll be safe and cozy over here in the Americas. That is not the case, my friends. All those illegal immigrants are here for a reason. Many of them from Russia, Venezuela, Cuba. We talked about this last night on Sons of Liberty. China. They're here to make your life unpleasant, and we are more reachable now than we were in World War I or World War II. All of the opposing forces in this have submarine capabilities right off of our coast. Oh, and by the way, we haven't even mentioned this yet today, but the Chinese and U.S. navies are surging towards each other at high speed in the Pacific right now. So,
yeah. I think there's a lot of stuff happening under the surface, right, that we just can't see within the militaries. It's an interesting time. May you live in interesting times. So, Watcher, what's your kind of take? I mean, where are you at with this? I haven't heard Watcher in a while. Is he? He is muted, and
he's
he's
here.
probably.
I think I was the high bet on the totem pole last time for percentages, so it doesn't really change mine. I think an above ground nuclear test is significantly likely. I don't think we're going to have a war unless we're, as Joe says, unless we're dumb enough to start it. But
the one thing that I don't think will happen, and I categorically don't think this will happen, I do not believe Russia will be first use of nuclear weapons against a NATO target. I absolutely don't think Russia would do that. Now, the craziest scenario is that Russia uses a nuke against Ukraine, which theoretically they could do. I mean, that could become something that they could make some sort of a rationalization for. I think it would be a really bad move, honestly. I don't think it would be in Putin's best interest to do that, but I mean, Joe, it's one of those kind of things. We don't play the game at the level that guys like Putin and Trump and a lot of these other NG play, right? So they have a different calculus than we do. But I just can't imagine a world where an actual Russian nuke strike, especially first strike against Ukraine, makes any damn sense. For me, the only outcome with an actual nuke going off that makes sense is the use, in a test, above ground test kind of thing inside of Russia.
And Russia's the one place where you could probably pull off an above ground test because they have a lot of just wide open space.
They've got the space, right? The other thing too, Joe, that I hadn't really thought about this, but you mentioned the nuclear torpedo earlier. That'd be a hell of a demonstration in the middle of the Atlantic or the middle of the Pacific or something like that. One of these cargo ships carrying a bunch of war material heading to Europe, or just to go up in a nuke.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would be a nuke used, but not on anybody's territory, and it would have a very limited casualty, incident with that too. So, I mean, that's not the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think that they would probably use a regular standard torpedo for that, but I really think that's actually an option. Right. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on what kind of message they want to send. If they're hankering to use the nuke, but they don't want to get nuke kickback, that would be one of the ways you could do it. One of the other things that I thought was very interesting here was the fact that, and this was reported by the Pentagon press corps prior to or after the weapon was used, was that the Russians contacted them right before the usage through the kind of reduction network, the nuclear threat reduction network, which is an established kind of chain of contact that we have between nuclear powers. So I thought that was interesting. So, Russia's clearly, I think they think they're playing by the rules, Joe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the rules are different. Speaking of rules, Calavera said that I think Trump can deflect these wars by who he targets. He goes after the leaders. That is the Ryan Doctrine, as foretold by the prophet Tom Clancy. Peace be upon him. When Jack Ryan becomes president, he says, I'm not going to fight the dumb, poor, illiterate soldier. I'm going to kill your leaders. And in the books, he famously kills the leaders of Iran. So.
Well, and Trump has famously killed one of the main leaders of Iran as well. So, I mean,
exactly right. That's why I said the Ryan Doctrine was foretold by Tom Clancy.
Donald Trump. Yeah. Foretold by Tom Clancy, used by Donald Trump. All right. Let me look at the notes over here. All right. I want to play a little bit of this. This is the kind of commentary I'm here for regarding the things that precipitated this attack. I think there is a clip in this story from Tucker Carlson. It's got the entire.
Yeah,
I thought there was a clip.
Clips. There's no clips. There's just two links to the full thing.
Well, I wonder if it's in the timeline here. I'm just going to look. Watcher, open the second one, the Glenn Greenwald interview, and go the second timestamp, 2306, is kind of him talking about the verge of nuclear war. So let's listen to like the first 2 minutes of that.
Extra months for free. So what I find it so terrifying. I don't think I'm sort of overstating that. I mean, we are on the brink of a global war.
But can you just say one thing about that? Aren't you kind of amazed by how impervious and dismissive media and political elites are of the prospect of nuclear war?
Well, it's unimaginable, and
push pause real quick.
I think it can't happen.
This is Joe. This is something that we've been talking about for a long time. You know, like all the stuff that's been going on with Ukraine. Like, listen, don't you guys see how you're like literally inching towards the red line that ultimately will put us into a war? And this has been dismissed from like literally every step of the way. You know, I mean, even our very own Patrick Fox here on this program said that stuff is never going to happen, right? You know,
it's a way to kill Russians without killing Russians, right?
Exactly right.
What's funny is these are the same people who all screeched when they thought Russia was paying the Taliban to kill Americans. It was horrible, evil, and a reason to go to war then, but it's not now when we're doing it.
So, right. Well, and like what Glenn just mentions here, how blithely the mainstream media is just kind of like either A, they're ignoring what's happening, right? Or B, they're like dismissing it. Like, oh, it's just, you know, Russia won't do anything. They're a paper tiger. They just are completely dismissive. They don't realize that Russia has the largest active nuclear, stockpile in the world. Maybe they forgot that. All right, go ahead and play, Watcher.
Fair, and I will play it, but I do think the point needs to be made that I think they do know. We constantly are in this battle of not understanding their motives. They've said explicitly that their goal is to wipe out 90% of life, human life on Earth. Maybe they do know Russia has a giant nuclear arsenal and that they're willing to use it.
Well, I think the shot. I think the shot callers definitely know that, but I don't know that a lot of the soldiers know that, right? Or maybe they don't realize it. I don't know.
Of ongoing frustration, yeah, and I will say the one thing that Trump has said repeatedly over the past, certainly since he left the presidency, 4 years, that he's received no credit for and should get enormous credit for, is that nuclear war is the worst thing. He was, of course, been briefed on it as the person who controlled the launch codes. He knows what it means, and anyone who spends 5 minutes looking into what a nuclear exchange would actually, do is terrified of it, but only Trump seems worried about it. I don't understand.
Yeah, I've said this. I've talked about this so many times, and I think it goes back to when Trump was president in the early stages of presidency. Every time Trump talks about the prospect of nuclear war, he knows that he's limited in what everything he can divulge, but he's so clearly trying to signal, and he often says it, these weapons are of a different universe than even the ones we dropped in Japan. That's correct. And he's obviously, as you said, understands and been briefed on.
But you see these morons at the Atlantic Council or AEI or Hudson or this cluster of the dumbest people in the world, all implicated in the Iraq disaster, say, well, maybe tactical nukes are fine.
That's
like such next level crazy. Like that's crazier than any schizophrenic sitting next to you on a public subway.
I mean,
that's crazy.
We constantly call like RFK Jr. They call him crazy. Okay. They call Tulsi Gabbard and Matt Gaetz crazy. Whoever. These people who have been in power, who have been generating American orthodoxy, especially on foreign policy, are the most insane people on the planet. It's because the United States has been the most powerful country in the world. No one could constrain it. No one could stand up to it. And as is true with everything, that level of unconstrained power corrupts people.
That is
and
correct.
These people have been in control of this power for decades.
That is correct.
Passed on one to another through this dogma that gets increasingly out of touch and detached from reality, and
megalomaniacal.
Exactly. I mean, at least during the Cold War, I'm not saying it was a good thing, but the Soviet Union and the United States were of equal power. They were competing with one another. They were both very constrained in what they were. They both were petrified of a nuclear war. We almost came to nuclear apocalypse at least twice, especially in the Cuban Missile Crisis through misperception and miscommunication. When a Russian commander of a submarine thought incorrectly that they were using nuclear weapons against the submarine and against Cuba, and almost launched the nuclear weapons at the sub, came about 5 minutes away from doing so until someone intervened on that sub and said, I don't think that this is actually an attack. It's very possible we've come to the brink of it before. It probably is the single greatest threat to the survival of the species. Not probably, definitely is the use of nuclear weapons. Every time Trump talks about it, you can see the fear that he's trying to convey to others.
Every time.
And Tucker, I'm amazed. This is like impeachment level stuff for Joe Biden on his way out of the door to involve the U.S. directly in a war for the first time. We've been very involved in other ways.
They should impeach him. Why doesn't the Speaker of the House impeach him right now?
There's a constitutional limitation on the president's ability to involve the U.S. in a war without congressional authorization, which is exactly what has happened through the use of these missiles, which, as I said, we need to help direct. And the question is, why? Right. The answer, though, is that the vast majority of the Republican caucus in the House and in the Senate supports what Joe Biden is doing.
As much as I appreciate all that, the interesting thing there is what happens at the end, right, Joe? Is that where they start saying that this is probably the most impeachable thing that's happened, in my living memory that I can think of, to the extent that Biden is even involved in what's going on.
Well, but therein lies the question, right? His absolute legal defense is going to be, but I'm not in charge, right? And he's not wrong. He's not in charge. So these people are absolutely trying to instigate a war. And I think it's really more likely to say, hey, see, look, everything was fine until Donald Trump won the election and then a war started. And they're going to find a way to spin this to pin it on Trump. And I said this last night, and I'll say it again. They are absolutely willing to burn it all to the ground rather than cede power.
Yeah, I mean, the more we look at this, I think the more I agree with it. It is a intentional plot. Let's see. Let me look here. We talked about chances. I mean, I put the Poly Market link there, watch here. So let's see what the current odds on Poly Market are for nuclear detonation of a weapon. Wednesday was 8%.
Well,
is it still?
What's their definition of a nuclear the detonation of a nuclear weapon? Because
they're
shit right now. They're multiple.
It seems somewhat self-explanatory, right?
Say again, Joe.
It seems somewhat self-explanatory. What's your definition of detonation of a nuclear weapon? Well, detonation.
Well, that's what I'm saying is if it's an 8% chance and there's money to be made on this, there's guaranteed to be at least one underground nuclear detonation this year. Oh, in 2024. Oh, I see. We only have a few months left. All right.
Believe it or not, I think North Korea is your biggest, potential likelihood to get a nuclear detonation.
You have $10 on Rumble.
Yeah, I've missed a couple. I'm going to catch up here real quick. Peter Shays Helicopter Tours for $2 says Damascus Steel Katana for me. Now I can be a real 99 Zulu elite infantry combat ninja. Take that, Benning. Then we've got Peter Shays Helicopters for $5. Has anyone ever stopped to ask why all the Senate confirmed U.S. Attorney Garland could choose to appoint as special counsel for Trump? He chose none and appointed ICC wannabe Jack Smith. I heard somebody saying an interesting use for Gates potentially could be as a special prosecutor. He is, in fact, a lawyer, so I guess that's really all. I mean, was Jack Smith even a lawyer? I don't know. I assume he was.
I don't think a real lawyer.
Well, Peter Shays Helicopter Tours for $2 said, remember in 2016 when Obama, Mueller, Clinton, and FBI sold all our uranium to Putin? And I thought that was absolutely Hillary Clinton, right? In the Uranium One deal. What if this was the plan all along? Russia is on a global population reduction. Well, here's the thing. Russia has for the size of their country, they have a very small population. They have a much less dense population than we do. I think they have what the official size of Russia is 2 times the size of the United States. Something like that.
Something like that. It's the second largest country by land mass in the world behind Canada.
And and they have the a third of our population. So, Captain Corgi for $10 says, "Not gonna lie, when it comes, I'm going to chuckle when the mid.gov employees shilling for World War III discover they aren't part of the continuity of government plan, and there is no room in the lavish shelter for them." Yep, the coop is going to be a downer for these people. That stands for Continuity of Operations Plan.
Continuity of Government.
No, I'm saying COOP stands for Continuity of Operation. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what the Army calls it.
Yeah.
All right. I think I'm caught up on super chats. Did I get? There was a member chat. Yeah. I got the member chat. All right. And so this is the last thing I wanted to share on this before we move on to our Rumble topic for the day. This is a tweet that
just so you know.
I know. Well, it's Friday. We normally go, a little over on Fridays.
Doesn't make it.
Well, I can't go super long today. So.
That's fine. That's fine. So this is the last thing I want to share. Like I said, there we go. I said this masturbatory fantasy has got to stop. Joe, this is the thing that I'm worried about. It's less the kind of the policy people. It's more the these people who are just kind of like itching for an opportunity to we could.
Like I said, these people think they can't be touched, right? That whatever happens won't impact their home, so it's okay to go to war in Europe. It will entirely impact your home.
And this guy says, you constantly hear about Russian nukes. Meet the Western nukes.
Imagine a single Trident II missile launched toward Moscow, with all 8 warheads targeting the same area for maximum effect. The combined explosive yield would be approximately 3.8 megatons of TNT. Upon detonation as an airburst, the immediate fireball would engulf an area over 10 square kilometers, or close to 4 square miles, vaporizing everything within its radius. Buildings would be obliterated within an 11-kilometer or close to 7-mile radius, flattening much of the city center. Thermal radiation would cause third-degree burns to anyone within 22 kilometers, or close to 14 miles from ground zero, covering an area of over 1,500 square kilometers or 580 square miles. The human cost would be staggering, estimated at over 2.8 million immediate fatalities and 4.6 million injuries. And remember, this is from just one Trident II missile. The United States operates 14 Ohio-class nuclear submarines, each capable of carrying up to 20 Trident II missiles. That adds up to 280 Trident II missiles lurking in the depths of the oceans. With each missile carrying up to 8 warheads at 475 kilotons apiece, we're looking at a total of 2,240 nuclear warheads. If you calculate the combined explosive power, it amounts to an astonishing 1,064 megatons of TNT. That's the equivalent of over 70,000 Hiroshima bombs worth of destructive energy concealed beneath the sea. This immense force is constantly on patrol, ready to be unleashed if ever called upon.
So, I mean, they can't see any negative to this. And I think Durna probably is on to something here. For $5, he says, Ukraine war derangement correlates strongly with could have served in Afghanistan, but didn't syndrome. They're trying to regain lost manhood. Yeah, I mean,
that's a fact. It's 100% true. This video is just crazy and psychotic, but unfortunately, there's a big chunk of Western society that feels this way, and they're excited about this prospect. It's crazy.
So my final thoughts on this should be are along the lines of Rick's here. They should watch The Day After Tomorrow. That's true. You should. That's a good one. Another good one is Threads. It's available for free on YouTube. It's a British movie. It is absolutely the most depressing of all the the Cold War apocalypse movies that I saw. Though Day After Tomorrow is pretty damn depressing as well. All right, guys, anything else you guys want to cover on this topic before we move over to Bongino's? All right, guys, that's all I've got for my YouTube audience. If I'm going to drop the link real quick here in the chat, and then we will punch out and move over. I prefer reading A Last Babylon. Yeah, that was another depressing one. Yeah, Day After Tomorrow is much happier than Threads. I agree with that. I mean, it's, it's more hopeful. Threads is just bleak. All right. The link is in the chat, guys. Definitely come over and join us over on Bongino's. Watcher, hit it.
2, 0, 1.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America. This is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. 3, 6, 4, 6. The chair is against the wall. 3, 6. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. 8, 2, John has a long mustache. 8, 2, 5, 0, 9. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.